Hey, good evening. Welcome to the Choices Podcast, where we're all about making better choices in our personal, professional, and relationship life. You can always find us at choicespodcastofficial.com on Facebook or YouTube. And we just want to say, hope you guys are doing good. Tonight, we're going to do World Gone Crazy. Last week, we spent it with our friend and new Choices Roundtable host, Denny Brewer. And at this time, I want to introduce my wonderful co host, Carcass John.
Hey, how are you, Bret? I know you had a frustrating moment there. Technology is not your friend, but today it is. You sound great.
Well, good. Denny, go ahead and introduce yourself, Denny.
Hey, Denny Brewer here. Great to be with Bret and Carcass. Ready to tackle some things tonight, huh?
Yeah. We like to always start our podcast with a wonderful lyric by Carcass John. And go ahead, Carcass. Tell us what our lyric is tonight.
Okay, well, I don't know if it's wonderful or not, but it seemed appropriate, and I went really far out on a limb. I've been listening to a band from Canada called Voivod. They are a very eclectic mix. They've been around 40 years, doing everything from heavy metal to techno to rock and roll. In fact, one of their albums, I was mentioning earlier to a friend that one of their albums called Outer Limits, maybe one of the top 20 rock and roll records ever. But anyway, there's one particular song that I really like by them called Tribal Convictions. And it seemed reminiscent of what we've been talking about, the world gone crazy. And I'll just read you a few snippets. Full of colors, offensive. I've just arrived like a flash in the dark. My life has been lit up like a spark. And then it turns to a big fire. And then later in the song, it says, are there any forces? Are there two faces? Are there some chances? They're searching for something. They're searching something to believe in. Their convictions. It's a crime. Their convictions. Self-destruction. At the time, their convictions. Exploitation. Under the sigh. It's going to be more. It's going to be war. It's going to be. And then they go into a chorus, which is who's the God and who's the dog. And so I know that's a reach, and it's not like super heavy positive, but going to our subject matter that we've talked about for the last couple of weeks, I worry about this tribal mentality where everyone is just sort of following the footsteps of somebody else. Nobody wants to lead. I noticed that leadership is a real sparse commodity these days, where even people who want things to change and want to change are afraid to speak out. So they just sort of follow along. And the crowd seems to be turning good things into bad things and bad things into good things. And we've read about these prophecies before in the scriptures, but not to make it too religious, but as I mentioned to somebody today, we all have some sense of morality in us, and I think that morality is being eroded away as we become just another rock in the stream of society, where we get tumbled and tumbled and tumbled, and we're not an individual anymore. We're just another group of smooth stones in the river. And so anyway, that's where I went with that, and I don't know if that fits where we're going today, because this is kind of off the cuff, but I noticed, I mean, I had great dialogue with Denny last week, so I'm glad we brought him back. And I hope he's a more frequent visitor, because
dude. He's part of the Choices Roundtable.
We got it now.
Yeah, he's a brother. So Denny.
Yes, Bret.
He's talking about dog or God or whatever. I sort of choose God, but I know I do. But what do you think about the tribal mentality of the world today and what's going on?
Yeah, I guess it's always been around to some degree, right? But yeah, we seem to have it, and I hadn't quite figured it out yet, frankly. And I think I agree with Carcass. We seem to be short on leadership. these days. And, real leaders, I think we can learn how to do a better job of leading, but I think there are some that just have that gift. And I'm afraid that it's become somewhat of a rare commodity. But I'll tell you the tribal bit, I find it worrisome. I think that it's created a lot of new issues for us, especially here in our society, here in America.
I think one of the problems that we have is if somebody doesn't get their way in this day and time, they say, well, we're headed towards civil war. Instead of reaching across the aisle and grabbing somebody's hand and trying to work as a team to help the people of the United States come to a better common ground, that they just say, oh, we're gonna have civil war. And that's just totally nonsense. But I do believe that the leadership, we said this before on World Gone Crazy, the leadership in Washington is failing us with power and money. They need to lead us as a community of leaders, faith-based leaders. It's just grab hold of your faith, lead the people, and let's go down the river and the journey of life together. That's not happening.
Well,
No.
something else that I notice, and just to interject on your point there, is that I think a leader isn't afraid to get his hands dirty or her hands dirty. They're not afraid to actually show people, be an example to their constituents or to the people that they're leading. It's a not so much a do as I say, not as I do scenario, because they are showing you the way. And I see this all the time in my particular business. I'm a minority where I work because in the landscape business, there's not too many Caucasian folks that work, and the bulk of the community is Latin. But they understand my approach because I showed them my approach. I showed them how I wanted that bed planted, or as we discussed, Bret. And by the way, I did go by that Texas State Veterans Home where we planted the Stars and Stripes.
Oh, yeah, good.
It's looking really, really great. But I had to get out of my car and not just point and tell people this is what I want. I had to show them what I wanted, and there you have it. I think another thing too is we spend a lot of time yelling across the pasture at each other when we need to just come to the fence and talk. And I'm not asking someone on the other side of the aisle to jump on my side or else. I'm just saying, come talk to me so we can dialogue and shake hands and maybe even give you a hug across the way. I have a unique social construct happening now in my family, and that's how we've broken the ice. And I like the fact that if someone with an opposite view is willing to at least dialogue with me, that I can understand at least from where they're coming from. I think we lose understanding when we don't discuss it, and I think that by coming to a place in the middle where we can at least talk about it is imperative. Otherwise, we're going to continue to yell and scream, and people are going to get their feelings hurt, and you're going to have shouts of civil war.
Yeah, I'm sick of hearing those. What do you think, Denny?
Well, I'm an optimist, so I hold out a lot of hope. But I will say this: I think through my life, I depend less and less on the government. And I think there was a time where we had some ethics and morality trickle down from our government, from our schools. And I don't know if we're seeing much of that these days. I think, my focus, I'm going to start with my family. I'm going to get it right with my family. You guys know where I stand on the church. I mean, I believe we should revolve our lives around the church, which is not perfect by any stretch. I mean, if you're paying attention, you'll see the church with the capital C, making mistakes because it's run by us men. God's given it to us. But but I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it every day, real fast, over our schools, over our government. Where we put our priorities, and something I like to say, guys. We're all made to worship. When you think about it, it's a very interesting thing. I mean, we were made to worship, and some will look at the religious, or I don't consider myself religious. I consider myself a Christian who has a personal relationship with Christ. But they would say, well, wow, he worships God. Well, I would turn around and say, well, you worship something. I promise you do. Maybe it's something as ridiculous as the Dallas Cowboys, which, I'm a Cowboy fan, but I don't really worship them. Right. I'm not going to worship the government. We find things to worship and to depend upon in our lives. We're just geared that way. So watch what you're worshiping. That's what I try to do. What I think we all need to try to do. And I've messed up big time there.
Oh, wow. What do you think, Carcass?
Well, I'll never worship the Cowboys, but I get your drift because I love the 49ers. But anyway, I digress.
Well, I don't really care for the 49ers. But
yeah, I'm sure you don't. But you know what? We can still be friends.
Duck catch. Duck catch. We don't forgive.
I do like their quarterback. I really like their quarterback.
Yeah. Well, and another thing I was thinking too is that we look at our leadership, and I use the air quote thing. How many of those guys have actually been in the workplace? How many of them really can not just sympathize with our plight and the inflation and bills and whatever, but who can really empathize? I'm mindful of those presidents and Congress people who actually worked for a living, ran for Congress. And I'm not going to drop names just to drop names, but Tulsi Gabbard really impresses me.
She was too.
She was military. She's well-spoken. I think she speaks her mind, but yet is mindful of others. She doesn't disparage the opinions of people that differ from her, but yet she was in the trenches. And if anybody can, lead out with experience of the working man, that would be a person that I think you could look to. So those people are out there, but they surely are oppressed, at least from my estimation from media and so forth. But those folks are there. There are good people where I work. Part of the reason why I love what I do is not because of the company per se, although they've given me the opportunity to be gainfully employed, but the people that work there. I feel remiss if thinking about not being there anymore for whatever reason, whether I retire or get sick or get laid off or whatever. Those are all possibilities. But we surround ourselves with a good community, and we try to develop people with good habits and good. You want to hire from within. Basically, you want the next manager to be a guy that has worked for you for a while. When I sold my company in Houston, I had my own lawn maintenance and landscape company. The guy I sold it to had been with me for 12 years and understood how I operated, understood my ethics, how I approached my customers, what I expected from not only myself as an owner and as a manager, but what I expected from the guys. And he was the perfect guy to hand that off. And he's still in business doing great things, even 15 years later. So it is a process, but boy, it's work.
Well, here's what I don't like. I don't like the fact that a Speaker of the House of Representatives goes in worth probably 500,000 and leaves worth 200 million.
That is a little suspect, isn't it?
Yeah. Or everybody was talking about our president. I don't like either one of our guys right now, to be honest with you, and just to get political. But how this whole document thing, one, I think it's on both sides. They need to let him go. But the box of documents when Biden was backing his Corvette up in the garage, I didn't really care about the documents. I cared about the Corvette. How does this guy get this? You know, that Corvette's $200,000 car. You know,
Well, but
it's
he's
the
never had a job,
67
though.
Corvette.
He's
What?
been in politics how long? 50 years or more? 60 years?
And he's making what, $150,000 a year?
Yeah. Well, as
Taking
president,
care
he
of a
makes much more.
family, putting his kid through law school, even though he lost his law license today.
Mm.
I'm just saying.
Well, I think
That
term
ain't-
limits
that-
is the way
that-
to go if you want to really get political. Let's just say
What?
let's have term limits. There's no reason why anybody
I
should
agree.
stick on us for
I
50
agree.
years
I agree.
and
Term limits.
talk circles around the same old blather every day about this, that, and the other, and we can't
And
do
if
anything.
you don't
because
give
of
me
that.
some money, this is going to happen. I was so sick of hearing that. But
Yep.
it's like, I don't like the fact, you know, Denny, I bet you even met him, as many people as you know. Did you ever meet Billy Graham?
No, I met his son, Franklin, but
Oh,
not
you
Billy.
did?
Yeah.
I bet he's an awesome dude.
Yeah.
But you know, Billy Graham only took like $80,000 a year in salary. He never gave himself more money than that, did he, Denny?
Not that I know of.
That's the story. The story is the man was on a payroll, took 80,000, never took any more, and he could move a country. You remember when the bombing in Oklahoma, he did the eulogy? I mean, that man was a leader,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Power and money. Here we go again.
Yeah.
But he was on a limited payroll.
Carcass, to pick up with where you kind of left off there, I don't like the professional politician. I just don't. I mean, I think there's some advantages for these gals and guys to be in office long enough to kind of learn the system right and really know how to do their job well. But we've got way too many professional politicians that don't have any. And you know, and I'll tell you the same thing with the press. I watch the press. I'm thinking these people have no idea what your life, my life, and most of our lives are about. They are clueless, truly clueless.
And they're so opinionated.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And they're not supposed to be.
No.
You know, they're supposed to be neutral, but that.
Unless they agree with me. No,
okay, so look, let's do this.
Yes.
Pounding on the table. No, I would say number one rule to living a life that's gone crazy is quit watching the news. I don't think anyone's given a fair publishment of what the news is should be. I think you got to turn the TV off when it comes to the news and watch something on. If you watch a lot of TV, turn it on Netflix or something. But you can't watch the news channel and have them not trying to get you painted one way or the other.
Yeah, you're going to have to work on me. It is part of my routine at night, I will tell you. And yeah, it would probably do me better if I didn't.
I just can't go to sleep after I get mad.
Yeah, well,
I'm Indian, dude. That's the reason I quit drinking 35 years ago. You give fire water to me, and it's next thing you know, we're all on a jet to Cabo.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm passionate about my country. You know?
I am too.
And these young guys, God, just looking at what they've sacrificed for us to have freedom, and then we can't hardly take care of them. It's just, I don't know, man. It really gets me irritated.
And Bret, to your point, I'm a son of a military household, and believe me, I've seen the world change quite a bit, and I've been all over the United States. I've lived in every corner of the United States, and it's frightening to see how quickly it has changed. Now, part of me, and I don't ever use that word devil's advocate, but part of me, I want to know what the opposition's thinking. And sometimes you got to listen to the news just to see what they're saying out there. And, but then you've got to find a trusted source, and that is darn near impossible. That's almost as rare as a good quality leader. But they're out there. And I think you have to scrounge and you have to find it. And once you do, then you need to direct traffic a little bit and say, hey, I heard through the grapevine, or why don't you check this out? I always ask my closest friends, what do you think of this? And they may have being an artistic person, I can remember doing the old adage where you're standing there in front of a painting, two people in the same room, same temperature, same everything, staring at a piece of artwork, and one of us doesn't like it and the other one thinks it's the greatest thing since the Mona Lisa. And I have yet to figure out why we were made that way, but that's the way life is. Everybody has their own opinion, even of the same exact things. So
you're gonna get Denny all fired up. Denny's licking his chops.
I know he
wants to talk about free will.
But see,
God's given us free will,
and I'm all about it. Someone told me that that obedience doesn't beget freedom, and I totally disagree with that. Because if you obey certain laws, guess what? If I drive 60 in a school zone, what's going to happen to me if I get caught? I'm going to go to jail, and
we have our first question by somebody that I love dearly and have known since the first grade.
Where do we go for unbiased news?
Huh?
Where do we go for unbiased news?
Where do we go for unbiased news?
Suzanne, I wish I knew. I wish I knew.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell. There's some I would say don't go to. I'm probably not going to go on the record as endorsing somebody. I'll tell you, some of the mainstream. Just let me tell you, it's ridiculous.
Well, listen,
it is ridiculous.
I'm going to give two. One is Bill O'Reilly's got his own show now on a different media. And I don't know what happened with him and Fox, but the guy is smart, Harvard trained. He grew up in the news world on the beat. You know what I mean? So he started to where you're supposed to start. And when you watch his show, he gives a lot of neutral stuff about how to live your life, like food, health, things that are, make you a better person. I like him. And then Doug Zint says YouTube has a lot of former mass media celebrities.
And by the way, Doug Zint, good friend of mine. Thanks for tuning in. Mad props. He's a good dude. You talk about a guy that's into some eclectic music. He's one of them, but we get along just fine. Good job. Thanks, Doug. Thanks for joining us tonight. But yeah, I mean, I guess there's that.
Here's the other one. It's Phil McGraw's new channel. It's called, what's it called, Denny?
I wish I could tell you, but I agree with you. 100%.
Something media where you earned. It's Merit Media. That's it. Yeah. Because it's all based on merit. If you work hard, you're successful. And I went out there to visit him, and they got a newsroom that is to die for. But he is not a political person. You might say he is. Some people say, well, he's a Trumper. He's not a Trumper. Phil McGraw is about getting the facts out.
Yeah. He's conservative.
Huh?
He's conservative, but that doesn't mean you're a Trumper or a Tulsi Gabbard person or a Biden supporter. It doesn't mean that.
They have the nicest news studio known to mankind out there. And he's really putting some good people behind the desk. I think, Suzanne, it's a good place to check on Merit Media. I'm trying to give it a shot too, because I'm sort of sick. I'm sick of people being all the way on the right or all the way on the left. Us people who are in the middle, we're omitted.
Well, what do they say? Moderation in all things. And so we're moderate.
Good done, dude.
1440 Media, I think, is not a bad one. You might try that one. It's called 1440 Media.
Watch it, Suzanne. Carcass is pretty rough on that metal. Is that a metal channel?
No, it's not a metal.
Dude, come on, man.
That would be the Metal Roundtable, and you're welcome to join there too if you'd like. We talk about a little bit of everything.
They're not going to talk about news on Metal Roundtable.
We will talk about new releases and records coming out, though, Brett. We will.
I say go over to Bill O'Reilly. I think he's as neutral as you can get. I think he calls it. You know what I want to see in a newscaster? I want to see somebody calling balls and strikes. That's it. Like a judge. I want to try a case in front of a judge who calls balls and strikes, right? Don't call the pitch, dude. If you start calling the pitch for me, Judge, just win. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Suzanne, I'll tell you another place to try. Smarter News. It's like Smart Her News. Jenna Lee used to be with Fox, married to a great guy as well named Leif Babin. He's buddies with Jocko Willnick. They've written a couple of great leadership books together. And she
you want that guy in your foxhole, and when it all comes down to it,
he's written a great leadership book. I forgot the name of it, but I read it. It's great.
Yeah, Jenna Lee, Smarter News. And
well,
see,
you know what?
you get me started. I'm on the right guy. Okay, so I'm a right-sided guy. I still like Tucker Carlson. I do. So sue me.
No, I think he's. I think he is. I think he's factual. He is. Is he a right-handed dude?
So.
Yeah, maybe so. But I think he's a truthful reporter. And just because you're conservative doesn't mean you're not truthful. And just because, look at Bill Maher. That dude's as left as they get, but yet he's starting to say things.
He calls balls and strikes.
He calls
I like
balls and strikes. I agree. So they're out there, but you know what? I'm gonna get not religious, but I think we all have the ability to, when we hear something that is so wrong, we know that it's right and wrong. We've all been blessed with that. That's all ingrained in us. Some of us have worn that down to where it doesn't work as well anymore. But I think that if we hear something that strikes a chord with us and we feel good about it, then I think maybe that's a road we should pursue. But when we hear things that are so heinous and so ridiculous, I think that may be a sign. And I'm just speaking in generality here. I'm not instructing anyone to do any which way. But I do believe in the spirit of things and letting that conscience be our guide, so to speak. What do you think of that?
Carcass and Diddy, I thought that was like way too nice. I really do.
That was way too nice?
I'm way too. My Indians right here, right now.
See, we're trying to counterbalance the
No,
Indian.
man, listen. I'm in here watching the news, and my wife's in there. She just works her tail off, and she looked over on the TV and saw, what's her name? AOC.
Yeah, I think it is AOC, right?
Did you see her jumping up on the stage like she was fixing to whoop somebody?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that lady is so high up in politics for us.
Who votes for these people? I just
no one in her district evidently votes for her. I've seen several things where they're like, we don't even know who she was or how she got into office. But I know, not unlike in Minneapolis, where Ilhan Omar, she was groomed for that position. And I know people in Minnesota are, even though it's one of the most communist states in the United States, that place is full of conservative thinking, moderate people. Yeah. And they had a former WWF wrestler as governor. Oh, and I thought he did a pretty good job, even though despite his background. But that in particular has caused a real rift. I mean, you now have a state that has more Somalis per capita than Somalia. And how does that happen?
Yeah. I don't know, man. Hey, Suzanne, we need you to provide your favorite quote ever. We're going to end the show here in just a second or in a little while. And we want to include your quote because I know how hard you worked growing up, and I'm sure it's going to be a good one. What else you want to talk about, Denny? Now that we got I always said we're not going to talk about God and we're not going to talk about politics on this show, but we talk about both.
But guess what, Bret? You know why?
Why?
Because that's all part of who we are.
That's true.
It's part of who we are. So are you like, do you want me to repress the fact that I like music? You want to do that? You want to go there? No. I would never ask you to do that either, because I know that, and we don't agree on all music, believe me. We have enough crossover to where we have a good time when we talk about it. But
Well, I think we get on the subject of, the crazy world. I think we got to talk about God. I think we got to talk about our faith, because that is the key. You just cannot avoid it.
And, I was talking to my friend Terry Booker today. Oh, yeah, that's good, Suzanne. Hey, he was talking about, he's a real good businessman, and he was talking about boots on the ground, how to live in a crazy world is we have to really love each other, and we have to be kind to each other, and we got to make a difference one person at a time down here. We can't do it up there in Washington. I mean, maybe it'll get there. That's my goal. My goal is to try to make a difference in DC, because if you're even driving through that town, you can hear the sucking noise. You know what I mean? Just sucking the life out of everybody else in all the other 49 states.
But you're motivated to do something good with your life, Bret. And as my granddad would be very, very cautious to tell you, you can't just sit in the corner and sulk, rocking back and forth, hugging your kneecaps. You got it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but that doesn't mean you have to stay lost. So I like you. I'm not giving up. I mean, I think I've made headway with people who probably would have never. I know for a fact that there are powers at work that make good things happen, even in bad circumstances. I still have hope. If you lose hope, you lose your
done.
faith. You can get that back, but if you lose hope, man, you're in big.
Well, hope is synonymous with faith.
I agree.
Well, I'm glad you do.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, even if I disagree, in principle, I agree with you.
Carcass is on that judicial bench calling balls and strikes, Denny.
Yeah. But Bret, we have to get outside of ourselves too, which is kind of hard to do, because what's my favorite topic? Me, to a great degree. So we have to work to get outside of ourselves. And man, we start doing that, we can make a difference.
The second best book ever written outside the Bible is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Matter of fact, my little niece is having a baby, and I gave him that book. Anyways, the reason the book is so good, it says that, Denny. When you're talking to somebody, they don't care about you. They care about themselves.
Yeah.
And what you got to acknowledge that. If you know that the person you're communicating with is more important, they're more interested in themselves and what they're getting out of it, then you're doing all the good in the world, because, it's like direct examination. You're going to just keep feeding them and feeding them and feeding them, and they're going to walk away really liking you, not knowing why, but you just concentrated on them.
Well, Bret, you're a great trial lawyer because you have to be a good listener. You have to. I tell people too, when you're in the courtroom, you come out of there and you're pretty tired, and you think about, well, why am I so tired? It's because I could not let my mind wander. I had to listen pretty much the whole time there, right? You got to get in the zone and listen, and you got to ask questions. Right? Those are two great attributes to apply.
You got to. You can't be taking notes and listening. I've had so many young lawyers working for me, and they start doing a final argument. They walk up there, and they got that legal pad in their hand, and I say, "Hey, let me see your pad real fast." And I take it from them, not go argue your case. They do good. They do good. So look, we always like to end our show. Look, we love Choices Podcast, and we love trying to help people make better choices in their life. And we're going to start really bringing guests on and doing free advice to guests. And I know there's a particular lady listening to our podcast that I want to have on the show who's trying to make a difference in the world. She's lost her daughter, and I want to bring her on the show and give her some advice. She's a cool lady and help her ministry. But we always like to end the show with a wonderful quote And this one was offered live by Suzanne, and it's the Serenity Prayer. And I'd like to read it if I could. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I appreciate her sharing that with us.
Yeah, that's
Dude, I
great.
needed to hear that. Isn't that awesome? People, we just love you guys. We love y'all calling in. We're hoping everybody has a great week, and we're going to continue our podcast, keep it growing. We've grown triple in size in 2 weeks. Just to make you see how simple I am with social media and everything. On the day of the show, I'd always just text people one at a time because I was afraid I was breaching confidentiality. Hey, will you listen to our show tonight? Then I remembered about the old Facebook, and they got me going in the right direction again. So we're growing. We're going to start advertising a little bit, but we're going to make a difference in a lot of people's lives, and we're going to make a difference on the way that we're treated by people in DC. Y'all have a good night and a great week. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
All right.